Hello, Old School RuneScape. Welcome to, I was about to say welcome to this week's Q&A. That's not quite true. This stream is a special stream focused on Below Ice Mountain. Tomorrow is the normal Q&A. If I'm hosting, then I will say welcome to this week's Q&A. But for now, Below Ice Mountain, I am delighted to be joined by Mod Oasis.
Hiya.
Say hi. Behind the scenes, we have got Mod Spear and Mod Druid and Mod Sani on the chat at Old School RS. And you're welcome. There is a new face in front of you. Mod Grub is a new JMod. So let's begin. Mod Grub, tell us who you are. What do you do? What are you about?
What am I about? Hello everyone, I'm Mod Grub. I'm the new senior concept on Old School RuneScape. My job is to basically go in and design and do lots of paintings and drawings, and I'll get a brief from the designers and I gotta go in with like a little flashlight and just kind of see what's up, what is it. We're going to be talking about Below Ice Mountain today. I think you guys may have seen the concepts from the blog post release. That was those are my scribbles. So basically my job is to provide a rough outline for the 3D guys and also give something to scrutinize right off the bat. It's a lot easier to scrutinize a concept than it is a 3D piece. So my job is really to go in there and solve all the design challenges visually. Yeah, that's me. That's me on Old School.
So a little bit later on, we've got questions and bits of feedback about the concept art. So we'll pry a bit deeper there. I guess the next question is, how long have you been at Jagex?
So I'm returning. I used to work on RuneScape 3. That was many years ago. I've been on a little 4-year hiatus. So I've just returned. This is my first month back on Old School. Very good to be back in the Jagex family.
And how have you found the return so far, working remotely and stuff?
Yeah, it's good. Working remotely is interesting. Certainly enjoy working in my own space, but definitely miss being in the studio as well. It's pros and cons, definitely. Hopefully the lockdown will be over soon and I can come back to Cambridge and be in the good company.
You can all hang out, have a beer.
Yes.
Cool. Mod Oasis, over to you for the introduction. Well, we know who you are. I just want to ask, how are you? What have you been up to?
Hi, I'm Mod Oasis. I've been working at Jagex now. Yeah, I've been good. It's been a fun week seeing with the blog going out yesterday and garnering everyone's feedback. I'm still really excited about the content, and it's good to see that quite a positive reaction from the community for something that we ideated back in, I think, July, as a new way to introduce players to different things in Old School. So it's really cool to kind of see it go from ideation to blog whilst working on it at the same time, of course.
Cool. We will get into those questions shortly because there's quite a lot, like you said, lots of feedback. Some positive, some very constructive, and we'll dig into that. Firstly, it's time to shill and sell out and go through some announcements. ! Steam, everybody. We're just a week away from the launch of Old School on Steam. It's coming on February 24th, which is this time next week. Even if you're not going to play using Steam, we really want you to help support our launch. So please wishlist a game. That'll help us with our kind of pre-launch activity, help us get Old School in front of as many people as possible when it comes to the launch. So !Steam. What's next? ! Game update. So earlier today, there was a game update. We added the Old School 8th birthday event and a new Last Man Standing map. The copy I've been given to speak to you about is you should celebrate in the style of Old School's 8th birthday event. Travel to Lumbridge and help Duke Horatio control the guests who have gone a bit bananas. Also, discover a darker side to Varrock in the new Last Man Standing map. ! Game update for all of today's editions. And lastly, yeah, go on.
I just want to say I love the event this year, the birthday event. I've always loved monkeys in Old School, and to just go all out with them has been really cool to see.
I've seen some really good feedback on the rewards, which I'm glad. I know sometimes the holiday item rewards come under a lot of scrutiny, and I think people are enjoying the recent approach. I think the last 2 or 3 holiday rewards have kind of unanimously been received really positively. They kind of hit the right mark between feeling old school, doing cool stuff, and also being a bit memey, which is what old school is really all about.
That walk, that little monkey walk.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I have one more announcement, !Quest, which is what we're here today to talk about. I'm not going to go through that. You know, if you want to read the blog, !Quest, because I'm going to ask Mod Oasis to give us a bit of a dig into Below Ice Mountain anyway. So I'm not going to read the shiny copy I've been given. Let's get into questions. First one is, okay, before we dig into Below Ice Mountain, let's talk about the bolt pouch, because this is separate from the quest and the post-quest content, but it's still in the same blog and will be included in the poll. Mods behind the scenes, could you show us the bolt pouch GIF? Awesome. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is what we're offering, proposing. And a few questions about it. Firstly, from Short Giant, which is, did anybody else have absolutely no idea that a bolt pouch even existed? That's a fair point. It just kind of highlights how it's not very well utilized. And then lots of the other feedback and questions we got regarding this was, I really like the redesign, but can you consider changing mechanics? So Ania Cat asks, the UI redesign for the bolt pouch looks great, but can you consider changing the underlying behavior, or it'll just continue to be passed by? The rune pouch and the seed box, etc., all preserve their contents on death, so please make the bolt pouch do this as well.
I think, yeah, we talked about this earlier. We all thought it was, a couple of us thought it was a bit weird that it didn't, because it seems like a really harsh punishment to die and lose all your bolts. So I think the current plan is to change it to keep your bolts on death, similar to the seed box, because yeah, otherwise it's like, that's so harsh. You wouldn't want to use it really in case you died and you just lose everything.
So I think what we're looking at offering it, like you said, is putting it in line with stuff like the seed box, which, and I'm borrowing from the wiki here, where if you die to an NPC, then you can pick it up with none of the stored bolts being destroyed. If you die below level 20 wildy, it will drop to the ground along with all of its contents. And if you die above level 20 wildy, then the bolt pouch itself will be dropped as a coin, and then all of the contents will be destroyed still. So there is some level of consistency with the destroying, but in some of the higher deaths, then you'll retain the stuff. Okay, next question is also about the working in the same mechanics. I don't need to ask that. Okay, Obvious Hornet asks, would it be possible to make the bolt pouch equippable in the ammo slot, so it saves an inventory space if you're only using 2 bolt types, which is not something really discussed earlier.
I'm just trying to think anything from a technical side that would stop the bolt pouch. It'd probably get quite nasty in the code, and I'm going to say the mean word. I'm going to say engine work as well would probably be included in something like that. And I think that's a much bigger rework of the bolt pouch than a quality of life improvement, which is kind of how it currently sits.
That's fair enough. I do want to talk to engine work and kind of highlight the fact that over the last however many months, we've brought in pretty much an entire engine team. We've hired lots of engine devs. They're being onboarded. They're hard at work. They're delivering really cool stuff for us. So, unlike in recent years where engine work became a meme for this probably isn't going to happen ever. What it now means is, sure, there is now room and scope to actually build like an engine backlog and start delivering player-facing features. Because for a while, a lot of what the engine work being done was kind of under the hood stuff that players wouldn't see.
Yeah.
Bigger team, that's good. Okay, so we'll move on to Below Ice Mountain, and that's covered the bolt pouch stuff. I'm going to ask you, Mod Oasis, in a nutshell, what is Below Ice Mountain?
So it's split into 2 things. It's a new quest for free to play, where you meet Willow, an archaeologist, who's looking for her next big score, and you have to help her out. She had an old gang. You have to bring them back together. It's not the hardest quest. It's quite an easy one, but it's hopefully a nice, fun quest as it serves as like an introduction to the dungeon. It sets the scene, whilst not just chucking the dungeon at you and saying, "Here you go." And the dungeon itself, there's some lore aspects that I'm going to skirt around because we want to leave it as a nice surprise. And on screen, you can see the kind of a little teaser of how it's going to look with some concept art Mod Grub did. It's a new dungeon underneath the ice mountain, coincidentally, with 3 activities: one for prayer, one for rune crafting, and one for smithing as their primary focuses, and then a new mini game to serve as like the core that links all the aspects together and gives a lot more reason to why you should interact with the dungeon. And you can see on screen the kind of cool concept art we've got for firstly the golem on the left, which are the kind of constructs you can find in the dungeon, which have some iconography related to runes. Could do rune crafting, who knows? And then on the right, you've got the new Bannite, maybe Bannite Mace. We'll get onto that in a minute, I think. That's going to be like a unique weapon from the dungeon.
Cool. That is a nutshell. Estimation mark quest to read the blog, and after the stream, we'll also be updating the blog with a few changes based on your feedback, which we'll be talking through throughout the stream. So I've got 2 questions here, which are quite a similar vein. So what I'll do is ask them at the same time. Felix335 and Tackler64 both talk about requirements. So Felix asks, are there any requirements for the quest? And Tackler64 has asked whether or not we have considered adding requirements or raising the requirements to unlock it. Their logic is that a no requirements quest seems kind of pointless to unlock a skilling area. Maybe it should have a 10 or 20 quest point requirement first, which is very achievable within free to play.
Yeah. Initially, we thought, no, let's just kind of have it because it's a novice quest. But I think the plan is to introduce a 16 quest point requirement to do the quest. That's so you're introduced to the game, you've completed some elements of it, so you're familiar with how the game works, rather than just chucking you into this dungeon and just kind of hoping you swim. You kind of get more familiar with the game, kind of doing some of the you do Romeo and Juliet first to get your 5 quest points, and that's the third of the way there, and then doing some more of the other ones to kind of that will get you used to combat, rune crafting with rune mysteries, ideally, to help kind of familiarize people.
Cool. Yep, that answers that for me. And we will update that in the blog later today as well, just to clarify. Okay, the next question is the Bannite, the resource mentioned in the blog, is it linked to Bannite in RuneScape 3? Similar name, but missing an N.
No, this is pure coincidence. I'll be brutally honest. When we were ideating it, we were just kind of spitballing names for what would sound cool as an ore. And apparently RS3 thought the same thing and said, yeah, Bannite's a cool idea for a name for an ore, so we'll go with that. So we managed to get all the way up to this point where we were with Bannite. But because Bannite is such a high tier item in RS3, it's like a level 80 item to build armor and stuff like that. To avoid confusion, we're going to look to rename Bannite to something else. And I think we're happy to start taking suggestions from Twitch chat on what people think the name for the new ore should be.
Let's do it. In the chat, feel free. Can of worms, why not?
And it's not going to be Ori McAllface.
Yeah, Modsani, if you want to go through all that chat spam and pull out some winners, that would be handy. I I see Aiza is participating, but I can't quite see what he's suggesting because the chat is going too fast. Aizor. Okay, I'm liking it. I have
good
seen a few
luck.
Pogites as well.
Bogite would be so good, but I don't think
Right,
we can
okay.
sneak that into the game.
Keep spamming us stuff. Modsani will go through the suggestions and we'll come to those in a little bit. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, so this is from UK Hammer 125, but I've also seen it raised by quite a few people. Would this not be the perfect opportunity to introduce an ice giant boss? As was mentioned on a recent Q&A, the giant bosses right now are far too time intensive to access, so this would be a great place to add a new free-to-play boss, which is either repeatable or at least much quicker to earn keys for. And we will, I think it was probably like midsummer of 2020, so last year, a really, really popular suggestion from, is it Dars, which is the Ice Guardian of Asgarnia. Really well received, like 10.5k upvotes, tons of awards. And that's what a lot of people are pointing to in terms of suggestion-wise. So, okay, question is this not a perfect opportunity?
Well, the first thing is, and law reasons aren't exactly the best reason to not do something, but this content was focused on the Ice Mountain, and when I think ice giants, I associate them with the Asgardian Ice Dungeon. So it's kind of, two separate areas of the map, but probably the main reason is we weren't focused on introducing a new boss. A new boss to free to play would be cool, and I really hope that down the line we can eventually introduce it because it will fit so well. So hopefully down the line we will. But for this kind of content, the idea was to bridge the gap between kind of free to play and members in things like prayer, rune crafting, and a little bit of smithing chucked in there as well. Whereas with a boss, it's kind of harder to bridge gaps because it's kind of more of a early end game thing you'll kind of be doing. Whereas with this, we wanted to address like prayer, but early game prayer is just awful. I can outright say it's one of the worst. And same with rune crafting, and that's what we wanted to fix with this dungeon.
Now, those are matters of opinion. What you said about the content being awful, and we do have a few questions lined up from like elements of the community querying, is it necessary? And we can get to those in a little bit later on. But I guess to answer this question about the Ice Giant boss particularly, we're not ruling it out at all. I think it was Mod Ed who really well put, it's not a case of this update or that update. It's a case of this update's coming first, and then updates following. The Ice Giant could be following. And like you mentioned, I think we are more of the opinion that if we were to go with the Ice Giant boss, it should be more in line with the player suggestion of having it underneath the Asgardian Ice Dungeon rather than the Ice Mountain, rather than the Ice Mountain we've chosen. Cool. Okay. Next question is from Fatty Dave, who asked, "This looks fantastic, and I can't wait to check it out. Would you consider some sort of tie-in with the Dwarven mines to the south? I feel like it's the perfect opportunity to tie the two areas together, and I'm hoping the lore will be related to the Imkando dwarves." Just noting, I don't know if it's this person or another player, I've seen this suggestion before, and they also mentioned that they play like a Dwarven mine only Iron Man. So there is motivation for asking this.
That's such a hardcore Iron Man. I mean, it would be quite cool.
Why? Doesn't make any sense.
No, technically, this dungeon is going to be buried a lot deeper down the mines because it's in like the core of the mountain. But at the same time, it would be pretty weird for there just to be a door, like just a tunnel that links them that no one's noticed before. Like the dwarves roaming around the area, like, whoa, did anyone seen that hole before over there? I don't know. I don't see the purpose other than to appease this one man's Iron Man. So
I do have to agree.
I just got to address the chat. I'm a 0 out of 10 cabbaged, and I'm all for Grubite. is your name?
Grubite.
I think to the player's question, you're right, Oasis, in that the whole premise of the quest is trying to gain access to these ruins. And if you find out that there's just some dwarves chilling in there all along and they've had access to it the whole time, that would be pretty weird. And that does actually lead into question 8 from the script, which is from the Mad King 21. Is adding this new content to the game just another way for Jagex to have people make more series locked accounts?
Yes. I want to see the Ice Mountain only Iron Man series on day 1 of when this content comes out.
Don't poke the bear. This is not the motivation for that. We generally don't care about series locked accounts. It's cool, like emergent gameplay, but we don't try and facilitate that. First of all, the amount of people making these accounts is minimal. We don't want to help facilitate that. If you want to do it, do it. It's awesome. We love watching it, but we aren't necessarily going to go and make it easy.
Yeah, I just gave the meme answer.
I know. I just want to be safe and follow it up with the right answer. Okay, next question I've got is from Syndrover. How would these XP rates scale to higher levels? I like the core idea, but some of the higher level free-to-play community is worried about the updates completely blowing current free-to-play metas out of the water.
Yeah, this is something I've seen a fair amount, and it's it's a reasonable argument. I'll start with kind of addressing the rune crafting and combat one. I've seen a fair bit about. It's all going to be subject to balancing, of course, and the more golems you can kill, the more cores you're going to get at the end of the day, because you're killing more than a player who's level 40 if you're level 110. But you've got to keep in mind that they're not going to drop from every golem. Don't have an exact drop rate, but the blog kind of said 40 cores an hour, so roughly around that, swinging upwards to potentially 60 if you're killing them very quickly. But you have to remember that with these cores, you're making chaos. If you're free to play, you're making body runes, which is 7.5 experience per rune, so it's quite low. And if you're members, you're making chaos runes, which is, I can't remember the rate for chaos runes, but it's also quite low. So it's not going to be worth higher level accounts with higher level rune crafting to do this, because it's kind of pointless. You're getting such a small amount of experience. And for fishing and prayer, we can kind of do a bit more to control the rates at which you catch fish. I think I balanced it around kind of 400 an hour. But the rates of the prayer experience is so low because it's so AFK, and then you're going to be spending a lot of time converting fish into prayer experience. You'll only be able to do so many fish an hour, so it kind of balances itself out in time spent. Because for fishing, it gets slowed right down with turning it into like sacrificial fish, and then finally offering it at the altar. They're both going to be like predetermined things that take X amount of time to do. So we'll be able to control the rates for those a bit easier. But yeah, you have to remember that with the golem cores, it's not really worth it if you're in the higher tiers of rune crafting. It's just to help with those early levels and to kind of guide people into more members style content with rune crafting and prayer.
Makes sense to me. And the next question I've got is in a kind of similar vein, which is trying to dig into the effects this might have on like a free-to-play community, like a dedicated core community. So Forks asks, do we need a new free-to-play quest? What's the point in adding a new dungeon to free-to-play? I get the experience is key to enjoy and bring in potential members, but polling such a change for a niche market such as this, is this worth such a thing?
It's
something we discussed at length earlier, isn't it? And now, so, we met to go through all the feedback and we discussed this. And I mean, to the point which you kind of covered in the previous question, we do want to be mindful of effects to like existing communities and metas and stuff. But I think perhaps sometimes we have to, and I think I'm going to get a lot of, I'm going to make a few enemies here by saying what I want to say. We shouldn't disregard constructive feedback from these elements of the community. But similarly, we need to understand that the free-to-play game is essentially a path to becoming a member. And we are, I mean, bonds exist, but we are a subscription-based game, and we're always going to remain a subscription-based game. And it's imperative that we prioritize trying to get more members and keep members, and so we can, you know, carry on being a viable game. And if that does mean that we change free-to-play, that's what it means. And after all, it's why we're polling it, first of all. Let's see if the players want to do that. We haven't even mentioned Steam, like how this is going to interact with Steam. And we've already seen a lot of you say, this makes sense around the Steam launch. And you're quite right. And I saw a question from the chat from Miso XS saying, will Blue Ice Mountain be released before Steam? The answer is no. Steam comes next week. This is like April we're looking at. And I wouldn't necessarily be surprised to see us do more free-to-play stuff in the future too. We've, in ideation days, we've had a few pitches which were like, what about if we give existing members content, like new tiers of bows and stuff to free-to-play players? What if we try and look at expanding the free-to-play area slightly? So maybe it covers a few quests you can find, or maybe it takes you up to Burthorpe, that kind of thing. It will all be polled, obviously. But free-to-play is an opportunity for us. And we want to be mindful of the communities that really thrive in free-to-play, who kind of like playing in free-to-play because they see it as this pure and untouched version or vision of RuneScape. But sometimes that vision doesn't really match up with our vision. But we need to compromise as best we can. Would be the way I answer that.
You hit the nail on the head.
Cool. Okay, next question we've got is from I Spell Wrong. And they ask, why is low to mid-level content continuously being pushed, even though you only spend a short time at those levels? I'd like to see more updates aimed at the high-level community to make them want to continue to play.
I think it's, you know, players who come in and they're like, okay, I want to level up. Let's take Prayer, for example. There are two options when they first join the game: is burying bones for awful experience, or heading into the wilderness and killing, avoiding PKs and using the wilderness altar, which is also very scary and off-putting. And, you know, it's off-putting for players, and if they, it can kind of turn them off to the game really quickly when there's so much other content they're already missing out on. So it's kind of bridging the gap between the two, between members and free-to-play. And I mean, you know, we do offer quite a fair bit of higher level content. There's quite a bit coming out later on in this year to be excited for as well. So, you know, it's a balance between the two.
I like that you've spoken to, there are some gaps that we need to be addressed at low level. But I want to focus on the aspect of the question, which is clearly saying, I want to see more high level content too. I think that's entirely right. And I think a lot of us internally have even raised concerns that we're not giving enough content for the high level players or end game players. And we're really, really keen on making sure that that happens. And even if that content can't be released, you know, soon, let's say we do decide and formally announce like a raid, for example, which we haven't done yet. Just like saving myself there. Even if that's not going to be released soon, how can we onboard you on inputting into designing rewards and designing encounters and stuff? Just so at least you've got that kind of thing to look forward to. We know you want high level content. We want to give it to you. The good news is that over the last year, especially the last 6 months, really, we've grown as a team like so much. And I think in this month's Gazette, which is going to be released next week, we're introducing you to like another 6 or 7 new JMods. So the bigger team means more projects. However, as with any kind of company, any business, there needs to be that time at the start, which is onboarding and training. Even to saying, hey, this is what makes old school. Spend time listening to our players, spend time working with the team, trying to understand what old school is before you get let loose on projects and stuff. Okay, I think we can move on to the next question. This one is concerning art. And Mod Grub, I know you're having a whale of a time with the chat there, but I'm going to look to you for some answers.
Cool.
This is not necessarily a question, but I picked out a user on Reddit called Lewis is Fail, and they gave some really constructive feedback concerning the Below Ice Mountain concept art and the visuals generally. What feels old school, what doesn't feel old school. So the players' feedback was largely that the golem doesn't look similar to other golems that already exist, like the clay golem or Zarkano's golem, that the pressure plate looks a bit complicated for old school, and that the mace doesn't look old school as well. So I guess my question to you, do you find this type of feedback useful?
Yes, yeah. Big love to Lewis. I had a good chat with him on Reddit, actually. It's a contentious topic about the art direction of old school. I said to Lewis in Reddit, it's an old game, and if you look through the whole timeline of old school, it's gone through so many different styles and aesthetics as different artists that come in. Everyone has their own idea of what it is. Lewis's feedback was really good. Everyone's feedback is good, definitely. If it just feels wrong in your eyes, just let us know. We are listening, and we do want to make it as good as we can get it. What that means is different for everyone, but we have a general idea of what's up. It's a low poly game. Ideally, we don't want to go towards RuneScape 3 graphics. We're keeping it low poly, so the comments about the pressure plate will bang on. Keep it simple. But at the same time, there's so many examples of that low poly style that's been taken to really high levels. And even in old school RuneScape style, it's nostalgic, looks good at the same time. And that's where we're trying to get. We don't want to evolve it to something it's not. I want to keep it old school. I'm probably over answering this question, aren't I? But that's the long. Yeah. I think the aim with the art team right now is to really consolidate what old school is, and that's never happened before. No one's ever sat down with old school and done that. So really exciting. All the feedback is good. Just hit me up on Twitter or Reddit. Let me know your thoughts. I want to know specifically what are the 3 pieces in the game that really kind of say old school for you. We all have our own version of that. For me, it's the crocodile, gnome child, obviously, and the rune full helm. Those are the 3 things I use as like a pillar. I want to know everyone's. That stuff's really helpful. So yeah, it's all good. More discourse like that, please. That'd be good.
And feel free to spam it in the chat here too. Some people saying crocodile is perfect. This is awesome. What we've got here. Okay, cool. Jumped ahead a little bit. That's fine. We'll do this now. Let me scroll back to my little script. Okay, so we've seen the concept art for the golem, and there were, that some players felt that it didn't look very much like existing golems. So I guess maybe let's talk about the process between concept art and an in-game model, because you can see this looks really different to the concept art. I'm going to say here, my personal opinion, this looks really old school. There's not a ton of lines. It looks simple in terms of shape and blockiness. You can clearly see like the body rune symbol, the mind rune symbol. It just looks old school. So all right, question. Let me try and put it into a question. What is the process between concept art and in-game model, and how final is concept art? By final, I mean, how dead set is this?
So concept art is not final at all. It is the napkin scribble. It can go anywhere from concept. Reading the comments, some people will think it looks trash. Other people will love it. You'll never win with everyone. As long as it looks old school, and that's my goal. Even the stuff that looks trash, in like 10 years time, you look back at it and you get nostalgia. Like, okay, yeah, it looks trash, but it's old school. For me, it needs to look old school. That's all that matters to me. In terms of it not fitting the other golems, I did actually have every single golem up as reference when I was going for it. I deliberately went away from those. It's a new zone. I wanted to try something a bit different. I've taken the whole kind of golem thing. When you look at it, it's definitely a golem, but it's not a Maybe not in the family of the previous golems. You guys can let me know if that was a bad shout or not. I'm quite happy with the result. I think, yeah, happy with it. It's cool. I like it.
I like it a lot.
He looks
I think
so...
what you're talking about... Oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, he looks really grumpy. Like you've just woken him up from a really long rest, and he's going to come slap you down.
Yeah, that's cool. Because they've been asleep for a long time. I don't know how much of the lore into Old Ice Mountain I can go into, but these guys have been slumbering for a long old time. So that was the whole vibe. I wanted to get that kind of, lumbering after 1,000 years rest kind of situation going on.
Yeah. The lore directive I got given from Oasis and Ed was minimal lore. And like the first draft of the blog presented, I really cut back on the lore. It was the bare minimum. Even that was too much given away. So we barely told them much about it. We've seen some good at theory crafting, and we want to see more about when it gets to release. You know, should it pass the poll? I think what you were talking about to begin with, where what looks or feels old school, is a really good conversation, and one that could go on for hours. I know when we released Prif and Song of the Elves, oh my god, last year, the year before, it's all a blur at the moment. There was a lot of talk about what feels old school, whether the environment felt old school, and I think everybody in the chat will remember the chat head issue, what feels old school and what not. So it's really encouraging to feel that we're trying to tackle what is old school. And I think even just looking at when things were released isn't the best way to go about it. If you look at the Black Knight Titan from 2002 in the Holy Grail quest, is the Holy Grail quest, yeah. The texture on the chest is unbelievable. And I'm going to whack a link to the wiki in the chat very quickly. Take a look at it. I mean, that is old school because it's bloody 2002. But what other in-game models have that kind of texture attached to the chest, that kind of chainmail approach? And then similarly, look at things like Kriara, which is old school, but a number of years later, or 5 years later. And no weird textures. It looked old school, but clearly a bit more complicated in terms of the amount of shapes and like shadowing and stuff. So, what is old school? Who knows?
Bringing up Black Knight Titan, that's such a good one because we actually stripped textures from the game, and now we just go pure polycolor. But Lumbridge has that. It's the same situation on Lumbridge. That bridge, you have the stone texture. So it's to be discovered. We're in a process of discovery in terms of where we're going to end up with it, definitely. And it's a long conversation as well.
Yeah, really long. I'm quite keen on doing more art-based streams, and this kind of conversation is good to have there. I think some players from the chat seem to enjoy this kind of discourse. Others want to see us get into the nitty-gritty of yes/no questions. So maybe we separate put some time aside to talk art.
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, should we take some questions from the chat, and then we'll go back to the rest of the Blue Ice Mountain questions? We've asked the first one. Anti-Vaxxer asks, Mod Grub, what would you change in Old School RuneScape?
What would I change?
So full remit to change anything.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't change much. I used to play it when I was way back in 05 and 06, and that's why we've come to work on it now because I love the game. So I don't really want to change too much, but I'd love to know what people's thoughts are. I want to personally be able to sheath my weapon and put my shield on my back. That's little features like that. I'm an artist. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. And I'd also like to be able to sit down. There's that homeless dog in Varrock that I love chilling with. I'd like to sit down next to him and just chill. Little things like that. Little things so I can just get into my vibe. But that's not for everyone. People play the game for different reasons. I'm an aesthetic person, so that's what I'm all about. I'm seeing a lot of oh no and a bit of yes. So this is the nature of RuneScape. It's so hard to make any changes without stepping on a few toes. So I'd be very careful. I mean, you guys have been making changes this whole time, so you'd know what that process is like. But that's what I personally like. That's what I'd like.
Sometimes we get the process wrong. And I do think, Aiza, apologies if you're listening and watching. But I remember when he was first asked, in his very first stream, way back in 2017, the comparison between you and him is hilarious in terms of what you've gone for. You've said you want to sit down next to the stray dog, whereas he went on this big tirade about efficient XP gains and high level skillers and stuff, and instantly made tons of enemies. So I feel good job. You've beaten him there.
I think there's room for all of it. Like, you know, there's one of the cool things about old school is when you grind out for something and you get back in the day, you got your dragon kit or your rune kit. It was cool not because of how it looked, but because of how much work went into it. So that's really important to know as an artist, because you can't take the grind out. And you know, RS3 has MTX to love and to hate for some. I used to work on MTX for RS3, which was an interesting process. Some people are all about that aesthetic and they can buy it. I love old school because you have to earn everything. So yeah, the two, there's room for both. There's room for both of those worlds, I think, and they both enforce each other. And since we have dedicated graphics teams and dedicated dev teams, it's not even a compromise anymore. So hopefully going forward, we can, really get some wins all around.
Learning as well. Sometimes we'll make missteps.
Yeah,
we can refine and make the process better. Okay, I'm going to stick with some more chat questions. Quackhead asks, do we have a date for when 6 Jads and the Transmog is coming out? And I know some players expected it to be released today. I think that was from a stream a few weeks back when we kind of paved that release date. But we're actually looking at early March, so likely the week after Steam, so the 3rd of March. Subject to things like testing. That's what we're hoping for. That can change, not 100% final, but we've got some level of confidence in it. Okay, right, what's the time? Okay, we're just under 20 minutes left. I'm going to go back to some below ice mounting questions, and then we'll go back to the chat to round up. Where did we get to? Okay, some Bannite Mace questions. Right. Mod Oasis, I'm going to look to you for this one. So we've seen lots of general feedback regarding the Mace being better than the Rune Scimitar, despite us stating that the Mace would not be better than the Rune Scimitar. I guess that's the question. Like, why is that the case? Why have we presented something better when we said it would be worse?
That was a mess up on my part. I think I went overzealous with the values, but they've kind of been brought back to be more in line with what we wanted them to be. I think once you did the maths, it did end up being slightly better than the Rune Scimitar. You get a higher max hit. So we've kind of taken another look at it, and we have some new stats that we'd like to propose that bring it more in line with the Rune Mace, but we're keeping the faster attack speed, and we're adding in a slight prayer bonus, not +4 like the current Rune Mace has, slightly lower, and because it has Golem Bane, it should kind of make up the difference when you're fighting stuff in a dungeon. So yeah, that was me doing a whoopsie and going too all in with the stats. It wasn't originally intended to replace the Rune Scimitar because I know that has a special place in players' hearts. It has a special place in my heart because it's like the cool weapon that you get in free to play, and it's the cool weapon I got as a kid in free to play. So there was no intention to replace it from the start, but there has been a lot of talk about, should this replace the Rune Scimitar? Because you can just buy a Rune Scimitar, and because you have to work so hard for this, it's kind of there's arguments on both sides. But I think for now we're happy with the proposal of it's slightly worse than a Rune Scimitar, but because it's the best crush weapon, because it has Golem Bane, it stands on its own 2 feet. Without replacing the Rune Scimitar in all aspects. Because getting a Rune Scimitar is still pretty hard if you don't just buy one. I'm not sure if I know 100% right on this, but I feel like the only way in free to play to get one is to smith one, and that's way worse than doing getting it through this dungeon.
Okay, you have answered the next 2 questions I got, which are talking about why not make the Mace better. That's good. Just to clarify, then we'll go through it. And did we add it as a drop as well with Corsair Cove? This Rune Scimitar is, I can't remember.
I've got no clue. I can't remember.
So just to clarify, we have revised the stats to position it slightly worse generally than the Scimitar, with the same attack speed. We've given it a slight prayer bonus, but slightly less than the Rune Mace, and it has the Golem Bane effect as well.
Yeah, so it will. I was just going to say, so inside the dungeon, it will be the best weapon to use in the dungeon against golems because it's got Golem Bane. Just so it's like crystal clear.
Sweet. I've got 2 questions about the Ruin specific buffs. I guess first of all, let's give a bit of clarity to what it's regarding. So one thing we're offering to the players is, if this passes, it will come attached with some obtainable rewards, would be the ability to unlock some buffs within the ruins. And it's things like increasing the success of the skilling activities and that type of thing. So the first question is from I See You Dead Now. Are the ruin specific buffs free to play or members only?
Free to play.
Cool. We can clarify that in the blog. I'll make a note to do that after the stream. And the next question is from LSS. Could the ruin specific buff section be polled separately? It seems kind of an odd mechanic, and personally I'd vote no just to that part, but the blog post doesn't list it as a polled option.
You could probably speak better to the should it be polled separately than I could. But the whole intention of the buffs is to kind of make the dungeon feel more alive and to have more. The more you input to the dungeon, the more you get out of it. So if you sit there grinding out Bannite or whatever we call it, you can kind of take the dungeon to a new level because you've put more time into it. So you get a little bit more reward out of it. They're not going to be like crazy improvements like you're doing. You can do tick fishing for free. Slight improvements that make the dungeon a little bit better for you because you've invested more time. And it's something new to Old School that I don't think we've done anywhere before.
So talking to the polling separately, but I'm absolutely fine with that. Because we are offering it as a reward, and we generally do poll rewards, I don't see the harm in it. It gives us a good idea of whether the players actually want it anyway. So yeah, let's do it. After this, I will split it out within the blog revision, and then we'll look to poll it separately as another poll question. I've seen some people talk to the fact that having area type buffs seems like an odd mechanic, but we have kind of explored that approach to some content in the past. God, what? It was the troll. My mind's gone blank. It's been a really long day. It's quite late in the evening. The troll quest reward, we added the fires. You know what I mean? The area effect fires with the salts. The brazier. There we go. The real Boogard says it's the braziers from the My Arms quest. Similarly, the Woodcutting Guild has an area effect too. So we do have these types of buffs and boosts already. But if we'll poll it, we'll add a question to it.
I think with those buffs, they're like physical things. They're like you build something or you get access to this. Whereas this would kind of be like the dungeon's leveled itself up. So maybe there's kind of like some room to make them become more physical and like an actual interaction rather than just buying it, if that makes sense. I think that'd probably sit better in the game.
That makes sense. Okay, a few more Blue Ice Mountain questions. This is about some questions here about the Dwarven Hammer. So, School Winner has asked, will the Dwarven Hammer be an offhand equippable or a main hand equippable item?
Here we go. This is so it's going to have to be a main hand, similar to the saw. I'm going to have to, probably have to answer a couple other questions in here as well. The code for the hammer is like tied into so many things in the game. So just making the Dwarven Hammer usable everywhere a hammer's pretty much usable is already a big rewrite. And then to make the hammer an offhand is just another step on top of that, which would require new animations and things like that, which just makes it an even bigger job. So, similar reason to why the saw isn't an offhand weapon is because it's just such a massive amount of work, not just from a dev side, but animations and and things like that, just to have all the animations line up. So we're just sticking with it being a main-handed weapon for now. It's a cool idea. It would be really nice to be able to hold a hammer in your offhand, so you can, repair the wheel at Motherlode Mine with a pickaxe in your other. But it's just something we can't offer for now.
I think a lot of people would like to see the saw and the hammer equipped at the same time. But the reason the saw is main hand is for the same reason as the hammer is main hand. And I think let's go back to what we talked about earlier when you mentioned engine work. As our team's getting bigger, it means we can do these more types of player-facing changes. So let's not rule it out forever, but for what we're offering right now, it remains main hand. Other questions about the Dwarven hammer, which I'm really sorry if you answered. I kind of zoned out for a little bit. I'm really, really sorry. Is it going? Why does the hammer have to be members only? And also, can the hammer be stored in a player-owned house? And would the hammer be able to be used in Barbarian Assault?
I'm going to rattle off. We wanted a little members incentive for the hammer. That's kind of, that's mainly it, as a nice members incentive to get, members into the dungeon and to kind of interact. The hammer will be usable in Barbarian Assault. Anywhere you can use a hammer to repair or build stuff, you'll be able to use this hammer. And I think the saw is storable in the POH, so the hammer would be storable in the POH.
Awesome. We're going to update the blog to clarify those things too.
Just as a caveat on that, I would like an offhand hammer for Fashionscape. So definitely fingers crossed on the engine team getting around to that.
I did see some people asking if they could have the offhand hammer, so then they could wield a sickle and hammer at the same time, and properly represent that left agenda. Right, we are, we're coming up to the end of the stream. I've got let's take some questions from the chat, and then we'll wrap up, and everyone can go and join their Wednesday evening. Where did I get to? We asked about 6 chats, didn't we? Okay, the next question is from Polymath42. They say, could we learn who did the 3D modeling and animation for the Golem walk cycle? They deserve lots of praise. I don't have that info to hand. I'm not sure who it was, but we can definitely relay the praise.
Yeah, praise will be relayed. He's done a really good job on that. Yep.
Next question is from Yojola, which is there a public roadmap that players can see upcoming content and proposed changes? There isn't a fixed one that we have easily accessible. We are looking at doing something like that, but generally in our monthly blogs and monthly leadership streams, so like the Gillenor Gazette and stuff, we do like to give you some indication of what's coming up in the immediate months following. And the reason we don't get really ambitious in the future, so like an hour on hour, that was really short notice. A year, let's talk a year, not an hour. The reason we don't show you what's coming out in February or March 2022 is because the situations change. Stuff pops up and we have to revise estimates. Sometimes we might only want to spend a little bit of time on a project and then it grows in scope so we can make it really good and really cool. But what we're going to do is continue to keep sharing that kind of 3 to 4, maybe 5 month vision of what's coming out next. We're also looking at putting together some kind of cool event for just probably later in the summer where we can talk about the content you don't know that's coming out. You already know some big beats coming this year, like Clans and Group Iron Man, old promises, but you don't know about what's coming after that. What stuff don't you know that we've got planned? There's quite a lot of it, so we want to have some kind of virtual event to talk about that type of thing. The next question is about the Dwarven Warhammer being offhand. We've answered that, so I'll move on. Scobcat asks, with the release of Old School RuneScape client on Steam next week, would it be possible to get some basic quality of life features for the standard client to improve the experience for new and returning players? Awesome question. One we've seen a lot of since the announcement, and one we expected to see a lot of. The honest answer is that we'd love to be able to work on this kind of stuff. The immediate priority is just to make sure the client is stable, our game worlds are stable, and we're ready to onboard lots of players. And then beyond that, once we're happy with stability and launch, maybe that's when we start looking at changes, if any. Next question. Can the buffs from the runes be in the form of potions? And then it says also Bannite Pickaxe. So I guess that's 2 questions. Can we have potions instead of like general area buffs? And can you add a Bannite Pickaxe?
I don't know what a Bannite Pickaxe would do. Maybe just for the aesthetic, as like a transmog or something. And in the form of potions, it seems a bit weird to drink a potion to upgrade a dungeon. So I'd like to kind of have a deeper thought about what it could be. You know, if you're fixing up the dungeon a little bit more or doing something like that, could work. But potions just seems a bit odd, I think.
Similarly, just I think this is how it works, right? Purchasing a reward from somebody and then getting area effects as a buff. That's also quite weird. Like, hello, person or character, here's some currency. And now everything works better for me.
Yeah. Well, all right, calm down. It kind of ties into the lore of the dungeon, like what you're using this ore on and who you're using it with and what does he go and do with it. All ties into stuff we don't really want to talk about just yet. So it kind of that aspect of it has some thought behind it, you know.
Okay. You know, I'm kidding anyway. It's just that sometimes we point to the lore and story and narrative as reasons not to do something. Then sometimes our narrative isn't the most consistent either.
Don't worry, I spoke with Mod Ed about the lore behind this one, so you know it's watertight. There's not a single pothole.
Mod Ed certified. It needs like a stamp.
Yeah.
We're running to the end of the stream, so what I'd like to do is remind players that we are taking suggestions to rename Bannite. So why not have a few minutes of spamming whatever you like to spam, ending in "ite" or "raw"? Tell us your ideas. And the last question I'd like to ask is, Mod Grub, how have you found your very first live stream and introduction to the community?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, this chat is really outrageous. But yeah, it's good. It's really good to get to communicate with you guys. Oh, look at these names. Oh my goodness. Are we going to collate a list of this? Shungo. Oh, blimey. Grubite.
Banite.
We'll have fun going through those. Are we writing all of this down? Yeah, we sure are, honestly. Big old list.
I saw one I really like, but I don't think I can say it on the stream.
Golemite.
Ah.
COVIDite. No, we gotta move on, people. When it's done, it's done.
I like how you use the suggestion. This is all right.
All right.
Okay, tell you what, let's wrap up. I'll go through the announcements again. We'll look to get the revised blog out later this evening. Hopefully not too late, because I'm tired. And then we'll get the poll live shortly after, based on your feedback to the revision. Right, announcements. ! Steam, everybody. Just a reminder, we spoke about it earlier as well. Whoa, look at that luscious mane. That's the announcement, everybody. Look at the luscious mane. Steam. We are launching on Steam next week, 24th of February. Even if you're not going to play using the Steam client, we would really, really appreciate your help. Please wishlist the game. That'll help boost us when it comes to launch. ! Steam. What's next? Yes, today's game update. There's a new holiday event in town. It's Old School's 8th birthday on Monday. So we've added a fun little mini quest type thing to celebrate. So travel to Lumbridge, help Duke Curatio control the guests who have all gone a little bit bananas. Also, a new Last Man Standing map. ! Game update. And lastly, the thing we've spent about an hour talking about is ! Quest. It'll take you to the blog for Below Ice Mountain. And shortly, hopefully in about an hour, maybe less, that blog will change with new updates and new revisions. Okay, that is it from me. Any parting words, Oasis and Grub?
Much love. Thanks for all the feedback.
Much love.
Much love.
Okay, mods behind the scenes, Spear and Druid. Take us away. Get us out of here.